Hi, everyone. This is Heather Lottinen from the Flourish.Academy. I am joined by my good friend and co-host, Mara Chick.
Hello, how are you?
Okay, what are we talking about today?
Okay, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Dr. Susan Jeffers. My favorite book.
Must read, don't you think?
Must read, yes.
Out of all the books we've done, I mean, aren't there some where you're like, okay, you can just listen to the episodes and be good, but
Yeah,
this one
is a get it in your hands now and read it. So we do have a link to the book in the show notes if you want to check that out on Flourish.Academy.
Yes.
So we're going to pick up straight on chapter 4. Heather is going to take us to page 43.
Okay, so we're talking about having power, not being a victim, and she says the truth is that you really are in control, in total control. For some reason, you are consciously or unconsciously choosing to be in that lousy job. You are choosing to hate the single life. You are choosing to stay in a destructive relationship. You are choosing to let your daughter drive you crazy. You are choosing to sabotage anything good in your life or whatever else it may be for you. I know it is difficult to accept the fact that you are the cause of the feelings that take away your joy in life. It is very upsetting when you begin to see yourself as your own worst enemy. On the other hand, this realization is your biggest blessing. If you know you can create your own misery, it stands to reason that you can also create your own joy. So this is about taking responsibility for everything in your life because there's always a payoff for what you do. So like she was giving all of those examples of things that you choose to do. Do you know anyone? I mean, I can think of a couple people who complain about their jobs.
Yeah, I used to be one of those people.
But you chose to say. Now, what was the payoff for you of staying in that job?
I chose, so the way I started looking at it, I hated my job, but I was like, you know what, this job gives me money so that I can invest in my education in photography and look at where I am now. So I'm thankful for that job now, but back then. No.
So you were choosing to stay in the job because you were choosing the paycheck.
Yes. That's
even
exactly
over
right.
the misery.
Yes.
But which is fine because that was a choice you made. And I think you came to the realization of all of that pretty quickly. But prior to that, if you were to complain about your job, that's when you need to say to people, listen, stop complaining. Mm-hmm. There's a reason you're staying in your job.
Yeah.
And
you have the power
you have the power.
I mean, there's always jobs out there, whether the news wants to tell you or not. So, she continues on page 43 and she says, I have been careful not to ask you to believe that you are responsible for all of your experiences in life. I ask you to believe that you are the cause of all of your experiences of life. Meaning that you are the cause of your reactions to everything that happens to you. And we've said this a couple times in the podcast, like your feelings are not the truth. They're a reaction to what you're dealing with. So, and she continues here, as you read the following 7 definitions of taking responsibility, keep remembering that whenever you are not taking responsibility, you put yourself in a position of pain and hence decrease your ability to handle the fear in your life.
Victim.
Yes.
Total victim. So when my kids pull things like, I can't do this or whatever, I say, oh, it's nice of you to play the victim in that scenario.
You know what? I would actually hate to be your child.
I don't blame you.
I don't think that I could deal with the constant coaching.
But they're going to be awesome adults. No, I don't do it constantly, and I'm very careful. A lot of times I try to, really kind of be undercover about it and low key and just kind of work it through conversations. Every once in a while, I will just overtly say something. But a lot of times I'm just kind of working it in a topic so that it doesn't come across as coaching or...
But this is funny because, I voxered you once about something like, I can't believe this is happening. Oh, it's so frustrating, but good. I'm glad this is happening because now I know how to deal with this.
Right.
And I guess your kids overheard that message and they're like, oh no, she's one of those Navy SEALs too. And I was like, oh, that's actually your mom rubbing off on me. Good. So we're going to go through these 7 definitions now. Some of them we'll just read and there's a few we want to talk about in depth. So number 1, taking responsibility means never blaming anyone else for anything you are being, doing, having, or feeling.
Never.
Never.
But what if it really is his fault?
Well, who cares?
Take responsibility.
Take responsibility.
Yeah.
And, you can always control your reaction to something, right? Whether it's whoever's fault it is. We're always in control of that. Number 2, taking responsibility means not blaming yourself. Anything that takes away your power or your pleasure makes you a victim. Don't make yourself a victim of yourself. Heather
I love this because I
point.
love this because she says, I know it sounds contradictory, but it's not. Taking responsibility means not blaming yourself. It's not that you are blaming someone else, some nebulous force, or the monster under your bed, or yourself. You are not, there's no blaming going on. It's, I'm taking responsible for what is happening in my life, period. I'm owning it. So I'm not blaming myself, and I'm not making myself feel guilty. Okay, there's a fine line here. You show yourself some grace. Okay, I am owning how I respond to this, but I'm going to hold myself to a higher standard, but I'm also not going to let myself stay there. So I'm responsible and I'm hard on myself, but not to the point where it's destructive. I'm not talking about negative self-talk. I'm just saying, hey, I own this. I own my own reality, my responsibility.
Yeah. She says here, there's never any need to be down on yourself. Nothing is your fault, quote unquote. Yes, you cause your unhappiness, but this is no reason to cast blame. You're simply on the path toward greater self-fulfillment, and it is a lengthy process of trial and error. So there may be times that we're super unhappy or stressed out, but there's no reason to blame yourself. It's really about showing yourself some compassion and saying, you know what, I'm working on myself, and that's going to be a hard thing. Mm-hmm. Okay, number 3, taking responsibility means being aware of where and when you are not taking responsibility so that you can eventually change. Do you think there's any areas of your life where you don't take responsibility?
What? You always hit me with these questions that are so good.
Well, I have to keep you on your feet.
You really do. Okay. I have most of my areas of my life are really together. I have created it that way. I probably need to eat better. I'm not super, I don't eat poorly, but I don't eat great, and I probably could do a better job cutting out maybe sweets or sugar or, things like that I need to take more responsibility for. I just really, really like it. So
sounds good to me.
What about you? Do you have any areas of your life?
No, I think it's actually the same thing for me because one, I'm emotional eating right now because of everything I'm dealing with my mother's passing, but I use those excuses to just shove all the cookies in my mouth because they make me feel better for one hot second, but then I regret it, right. And so that's the struggle. But I wish I could. Well, I should not wish because I can take responsibility for that, and I probably should. So I'll try.
Okay,
I'll try.
Good. That's all
okay, Heather, number 4. Do you want to pick that up?
Yes, number 4. My goodness, where is number
48?
4? Thank you. Number 4, taking responsibility means handling the chatterbox. This is the little voice inside, the voice that tries to drive you crazy and often succeeds. I'll bet some of you don't even know it's there. I was shocked when I became aware of it, but I promise you it holds the key to all your fears. It's the voice that heralds doom, lack, and losing. So she talks about this. She'll refer to the chatterbox throughout the rest of the book. This is the voice in your head, the negative voice in your head.
So we call this the inner mean girl in the self-love world.
Is that right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. This little inner voice of yours, it originally came to being because it was trying to protect you from something. Okay? Really, that's what it's about. It was protecting you from fear and failure and rejection, and it comes from a place of fear. So it's trying to protect you from putting yourself out there. So you just kind of have to show it some love and compassion. Like, yes, I hear you, but I'm okay. I'm going to get through this. Like, we will be okay. So if you come from a place of love towards that inner...
Well, that's interesting. So you talk to the chatterbox.
Yeah.
And you say, hey.
She has a name. You're supposed to name her.
Really?
Yeah.
What's your name? Do you have one?
Martha.
Oh my gosh.
You're learning a lot about me today.
This is hilarious. Okay, Martha.
Okay, she's my inner chatterbox who tries to tell me to stop doing things and you're not good enough and don't do that. And
so what do you say to her?
I just say, it's okay, Martha. I hear you, but we'll get through it together.
I think that's actually really smart to acknowledge it rather than try to ignore it or shut it up. Really smart.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, I'm smart.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, number 5. Taking responsibility means being aware of payoffs that keep you stuck. Payoffs explain why we choose to perpetuate what we don't want in our lives. So this goes back to the job analogy where, the payoff was obviously literally the paycheck. That was the payoff, staying in the job. But and then she has examples that from clients of hers, I believe, that are really, really good. That's why you need to pick up the book and read this. She talks about someone who was always sick and what the payoff was. And the payoff in this case for this particular person was it got her attention. Attention that she was really lacking in areas of her life, different areas of her life. But so she was getting this like, oh, you poor thing. Oh, so she was getting sick all the time. And it was because she wanted
the attention.
Yeah. So there's always a payoff. Sometimes it's really deep. Like you have to really figure out because, somebody that does that, a hypochondriac, for instance, is going to say, no, that's not true. That's not why I do it. But it takes some self-reflection and to go really deep to figure out what is the payoff you are getting from, for me, I asked myself, what is the payoff I'm getting from continuing to eat things I know are probably not the best for me? Well, the payoff is that they taste good.
For 2.3 seconds, and then you're like, why did I eat that?
Yeah. It's strange, but there has to be a bigger payoff, actually.
Yeah,
I just haven't,
we haven't figured it out yet.
I haven't uncovered it. Okay, number 6. Taking responsibility means figuring out what you want in life and acting on it. Set your goals, then go out and work toward them. So I wrote in my margin, you are in control. Sculpt your own life. Most of us do not sculpt our lives. We accept what comes our way, then we gripe about it. Many of us spend our lives waiting for the perfect mate, waiting for the perfect job, waiting for the perfect friends to come along. There's no need to wait for anyone to give you anything in your life. You have the power to create what you need. Given commitment, clear goals, and action, it's just a matter of time. I feel pretty strongly about this because I may have alluded to this earlier. That I've set up my life the way I've sculpted it the way I want it. And if it's not going the way I want, it is 100% my responsibility. I need to change something to make it how I want. But you have to set goals. You have to get a clear vision for what it is you want.
And we did a whole podcast series on goal setting and Your Best Year Ever by Michael Hyatt. So if you haven't listened to that yet, go check it out.
And I have an entire online course dedicated to it.
Oh, that's right.
In the productivity course, we go over goals and getting...
Okay, we'll have to link that in the show notes.
For sure, because I have an entire series on gaining clarity. Because it's usually not the execution that's a problem. It's defining what it is you want. So clarity comes first. You have to get the clarity in order to execute. Number 7, taking responsibility means being aware of the multitude of choices you have in any given situation. Because you can choose. You can choose how you respond to someone not being kind to you. You can choose how to respond to your boss, to your day, to the weather. I mean, it's really silly to get mad at the weather, yet I do. I do get mad at the weather because we have photo shoots we have to reschedule, but the weather is inert. So I did not hurt the weather's feelings, but it's wasted energy. It's not productive for me to get upset with the weather, but I control my choice in how I react to that situation.
And every moment you're choosing the way you feel.
Every moment
you're choosing the way you feel. Okay, that was great. I love that stuff. We're going to move straight into chapter 5 called Pollyanna Rides Again.
Okay, were you familiar with Pollyanna prior to seeing this? I mean, I kind of knew of it on the periphery.
A little bit, but not as in-depth as I probably should have been. But
so she says, Pollyanna is a delightful story about a young girl who made a game of finding something to be glad about in anything negative that came into her life. Over the years, this kind of Pollyanna thinking has been maligned as being naive and unrealistic.
Sorry.
I'm a Pollyanna. I am. Yeah. I ask everyone at dinner every night, what went right today? And even if something went wrong, what was the benefit of that? You can turn it. You can choose your approach.
Okay. Want to take us to page 62?
I do. Then? Okay, so she talks about positive thinking. And she says, and resist we do, meaning people resist positive thinking. It is one of the most difficult concepts to get across to people. When I present my ideas on positive thinking in my workshops and classes, many of my students respond immediately with, oh, that's not realistic. When I question them about what makes negative thinking more realistic, they cannot give me an answer. There's an automatic assumption that negative is realistic and positive is unrealistic. Upon inspection, this is pure madness. It is reported that more than 90% of what we worry about never happens. That means that our negative worries have less than a 10% chance of being correct. If this is so, isn't being positive more realistic than being negative? Think about your own life. I'll wager that most of what you worry about never happens. So are you being realistic when you worry all the time? No.
That was a hard no.
No. It actually makes more sense to be positive than negative about things. And would you not agree that the things that actually hit you square in the face are the things you had not even considered?
Yeah.
Your everyday worries were nothing when your mom died. And that hit you like a ton of bricks. But you wouldn't have been sitting around worrying about that.
No.
So all the other stuff was like silly. It was a waste of your time to worry about that. But
it's true.
Yeah.
And then 64, Heather, I think you had some stuff you wanted to talk about there too.
I love this book. Okay, this is the Pollyanna chapter. She has this exercise here. This was so interesting to me. She does this in her workshops. And so Mara and I did this with our mastermind group. I've done it with my family, and it actually works. She had someone come to the stage and put her arm straight out to her side. And she wanted her to say, I am a weak and unworthy person. She said that 10 times. And then Susan pushed down on her arm, and her arm just collapsed, just went down. Then she had her say 10 times, I am a strong and worthy person. 10 times out loud, same thing. When she pushed down her arm, she couldn't budge it. She had her do the weak and unworthy, and the arm fell again. So I've done this to my 10-year-old who doesn't want to believe that any of this really matters or works, and it happens every single time. So if that's true, and we've proven it, she's proven it, then if you just say to yourself repeatedly, I am strong and worthy. I am strong and worthy. If you say that repeatedly, it will become so. Even as if you said earlier, even if you don't mean it, it will happen.
Just do it. She says here, positive words make us physically strong. Negative words make us physically weak. It doesn't matter if we believe the words or not. The mere uttering of them makes our inner self believe them. It is as though the inner self doesn't know what is true and what is false. It doesn't judge. It only reacts to what it is fed. Stop feeding yourself negative thoughts. Negative thoughts take away your power and thus make you more paralyzed to your fear. Holy freaking
Okay, listen to this. So I have an example of this. I think it was last week or maybe the week before. Ella got a cold. She and she does not handle this well. It was a pretty bad cold, but she did get a cold. And then my mom started fighting something off. And then Evan was a little sniffling. By the way, this house is very healthy. We rarely to never get sick. And then Craig said he started feeling a little funny, which is even more rare. And I had a bunch of plans, and I was like, well, it's not going to happen to me. Well, one night I was going to bed, and I was like, uh-oh, something's starting to feel like a little bit off. So I got into bed early, and I said repeatedly, I am strong and healthy. Out loud. I am strong and healthy. I'm talking incessantly till I literally couldn't speak anymore. I fell asleep saying it. Craig is like, what are you muttering? And I said, I'm strong and healthy. I'm strong and healthy. Repeated it over and over. When the minute I opened my eyes the following morning, I felt fantastic. Great. Like nothing was coming my way. And I kept saying it because there was something floating around this house and I was determined not to get it. I've been saying that and doing that for almost 2 years. I have not been sick. 2 years of me fighting illnesses by saying I'm strong and healthy out loud repeatedly. Your brain will believe it, and it does something to your immune system that kicks it up a notch, that fights off whatever is coming. And I used to get sick all the time, so I'm living proof that this works.
Well, it works for me too. I've read the book You Are the Placebo, which I loved, and I've had terrible back issues for 2 years now, and I used to just walk around all the time. After my back surgery, I re-herniated my lower disc, and I was like, I'm strong and healthy. I'm strong and healthy. My back is in the perfect position. My nerves are not, my discs are in place. My nerves are not being aggravated. Like, it was just my back is in the perfect position. And within 2 weeks, literally within like a week, my chiropractor was like, what happened to you? And I'm like, I'm healing myself with my mind. Like, it works. Okay?
It absolutely works.
our frou-frou stuff works.
I know.
Okay?
I know. And we're pretty scientific. I don't
We
feel
are.
like we're very frou-frou. My mom did the same thing, read the
Yeah.
same book, healed her back, and I've been not getting sick. So if you don't believe that this works, what does it hurt to try?
It doesn't hurt to try.
What do you
Just
have to
put
lose?
yourself out there.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to move to chapter 6, when they don't want you to grow.
Oh, who is they?
Who's they? Okay, we're going to pick up on page 80. And Susan says, it is amazingly empowering to have the support of a strong, motivated, and inspirational group of people. If you are now cringing with the realization that the people in your life belong in the weak, stuck, and depressed category, don't worry. Awareness of this fact is the key to the solution. Most of us are not aware that we belong to the moan and groan crowd until we stop moaning and groaning. When we become aware, things automatically start to take care of themselves. As you begin to grow, you will notice that you no longer want to be around depressing people. Negativity is contagious, and you walk away feeling lousy after spending time in the company of a negative person. Positiveness is contagious as well, and spending time with a positive person makes you feel as though you can sprout wings and fly. This is so true. Like when I started this whole self-development thing and making sure I was reading books, it was like, I really don't want to be around people who are complaining all the time. Like, what is complaining getting us? It's not getting us anywhere. We're just still in our misery. So stop.
And you can take control of it.
Yes.
And this might mean for some people that they have to distance themselves from some people in their lives because you just don't want to be around. It's contagious. It is. And we've read about it in a few other books too. I think in the Charisma Myth, she talks about this contagion, she calls it. When you're around positive people, you really feel like you can do anything. But the same is also true. If you're around people that bring you down, and not everybody's going to understand your journey, and that's okay. Just maybe not share it with them.
It's true.
I mean, share it with people who are going to uplift you.
Right.
Okay, also, page 84. I really like this idea of a technique that the author calls paradoxal intention. So she was working with this client named Doris who had severe anxiety about leaving her house. So she had agoraphobia. She didn't want to leave the house. She was afraid, all kinds of physical reactions to this. So what she did, she came to this class, the author was there, and she said, I wanted to encourage her to do the very thing that she feared, because what we resist persists. So I told her not to resist and show us exactly what a panic attack looked like. As predicted, she couldn't muster one up no matter how hard she tried, and ultimately she began to laugh, as did the rest of us. From that moment, she was on her way back to health. So she would have these panic attacks when she left the house. She came to the class, and the author said, hey, show us what that looks like. And she couldn't. Paradoxal intention. I thought that was so interesting. So instead of trying to, like you were talking about Martha a minute ago, this is hilarious. Instead of trying to resist her or ignore her, like, shut up, you actually have a conversation with her, like, oh, you're there, okay, this is going to be okay, and it's fine. So, because if you try to resist, it will persist. I just thought that was a great idea.
Okay, great. We're going to move straight to page 93. Awareness is key. Know that in all likelihood, as you start to take risks and grow, you are going to get resistance from people in your life. It's a given. If it isn't your mate, it will be your parents or your children or your friends. When you rock the boat, someone will tell you to sit down. You need not feel shocked, surprised, or self-righteous. It is their way of defending their security. Often they don't even know they are doing it. In their minds, those admonitions and observations seem totally justified and, quote, for your own good. What is important is that you know what is happening. So we were talking about this, and I've made a lot of changes in my life, and quit my corporate job, and then decided, and while I was a photographer, I'm like, weddings aren't for me. I just want to photograph boudoir. Every step of the way, when I've had to make these like big decisions, there has always been somebody in my life that's like, "Ooh, hold the reins. I'm worried for you. Have you thought about that?" One was my mom, and I know it's her instinct as my mother to try to protect me from these things. And some people in your circle will be like, "Oh, well, she's growing. She's gonna like leave us and forget about us," and so they're trying to protect themselves. I've had that happen to me too, but particularly my mom. would just like make sure you think about that a little bit more. Are you sure you want to quit weddings? You're so good at it. So you just have to know what's right for you, and that if you've done goal setting and you've done, all these exercises that we're giving you, reading these books, like that you have yourself covered. Because at the end of the day, you kind of have to take care of yourself. You're your own best friend at this point, and you're the one that's going to support yourself the most, because some of these people are not going to understand. So it's okay to stand up for yourself and be like, I know what I'm doing. And even if I fail, I'm going to learn something. But I would regret not trying. And you don't want to live a life of regret like that. So
I think what we would encourage you to do, our listeners, is to stand firm.
Yeah.
Stand firm and have resolve,
Yes.
fortitude, so that you can keep pressing forward. Okay, I want to leave you with this strategy. This week, I want you to try to go 1 week without criticizing anyone or complaining about anything.
Oh, gosh.
No complaining, no criticizing. 1 week. Shut up. Not a word.
Okay. Wow. Thanks. Okay. My gosh, that's going to be hard.
It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard.
That's a challenge because our minds are trained for the negative. So you kind of have to be very aware and conscious of what you're doing and flip it around. Okay, Heather, how can everyone support our podcast?
Make sure you use our Amazon affiliate link when buying this book. Helps offset the cost. Share, like, review, leave a comment. Let us know you're there. It would be super helpful.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening. We'll catch you next time on the Flourish Academy podcast.